live.
Okay.
And apparently now we are live.
Okay.
This works. There's no little YouTube hiccups.
Yep, I see me on delay.
I can see some comments, but I can't actually see us.
I can see me on the thing, but it's like delayed several seconds.
I'm not seeing it. Oh, the beauty of technology.
It's very weird to watch myself several seconds delayed. Very weird.
I'm still getting my, I don't know why YouTube does this. You can't include your special, your specific thumbnail until after the broadcast or something. Mm-hmm. So I'm just seeing my own personal header right now. The reading, writing, and loving literature. It's not even showing on my end.
Well, I think we actually are live.
Well, what would you like? Well, I'm trying to figure out why I can't say anything. Would you like to introduce yourself?
You want me to introduce myself? Sure.
I just found it. Okay, there we go. For some reason, Google Chrome didn't like me, but what is it? Opera did, so that worked.
Oh, gosh, my teeth look huge. Well, hi, I'm Adele Buck. I am an as yet unpublished romance novelist, women's fiction novelist, and I live just outside of Washington, D.C., and I had the great good fortune of meeting Angela at the Bowling Green State University Pop Culture Conference last month, I guess it was. Feels like a lot longer ago. And she was kind enough to ask me to be on.
I mean, I'm so honored that you said yes. I mean, you're such a sweetheart, and you were such a great presenter. I loved your presentation. I thought you were so engaging, and then you were so sweet during the conference because I met you the day before you presented, so I felt like I knew you when you were getting up there. So it was just a lot of fun, and I was so happy. It's so weird that you teach, or you're a librarian at Georgetown University, so you're really close to me. But it took going to Bowling Green to meet you.
Yeah, it took going to an hour and some outside of Detroit for two ladies from the DC area to meet each other. Hi, Max.
I was going to say, and for you to meet the dog.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's that time of the year where all the students are vacating and moving out of their apartments because I live in a very student-driven apartment building. So they're all leaving, making noise, packing. So he's been on. He's on, I don't know, he's high strung today because everyone keeps making noise because they're moving their boxes and people are leaving, so he's on his A game making noise today. So I apologize in advance if he decides to start barking.
There's a disturbance in the forest. We'll just pretend we're on a Smart Bitches podcast, which always requires some sort of intervention by an animal, right?
I was gonna say I'm behind. They have so many podcasts.
Oh God, I know too. But Sarah always has, like, somebody always apologizes because their animal's doing something in the background, and Sarah's always like, "Oh, it wouldn't be a podcast without an animal." So
I like that mentality. And we have quite a few people in the comment section. We have Nicole who came in to say hi, and I love her. Nicole, who picked this book, she's one of my best friends. I love her. It looks like we have Natalie, so welcome Natalie. And I saw Kristen pop up. We have Lady Gizmo, so we got a few people joining us, which is exciting.
Yes, very exciting.
I know I have to do that, like, lean in because I wear progressives, so I have to do that lean in to get, oh, which one is which.
Yeah, I am kind of nearsighted as a result of going to law school, partly, and so I don't need glasses except to basically to drive, go to the movies, whatever. But I'll get there soon, I'm sure, because I am of a certain age.
I was gonna say, I don't know how much age has to do with it because I've been wearing glasses since I was 11 or 12. I've been wearing glasses a very long time.
Well, trust me, if you start out with 2010 vision, which I did, and it does go after a while.
I mean, I know law textbooks are very more in depth than the journal articles and academic texts, but I feel the pain of the close reading. I feel that.
Close reading plus stress, basically, your eyeballs have muscles in them or around them, and apparently it's the same thing as the tension in your neck and shoulders, and just locks up after a while. That was what my optometrist told me anyway. Anyway, we came here to talk about eyeballs. No, we didn't. We came here to talk about romance novels.
Yes. No, I was going to say, I mean, if anyone has any questions, please tweet it. You know, not tweet. Well, you can't tweet, but comment away.
But I'm not following a Twitter feed right now.
No, because all day I was tweeting, so I feel like I have Twitter on the brain. Yeah. I was going to say, so I have a few questions written down, but if you guys want to jump in with your own, please feel free. I want you to ask her and pick her brain because she's brilliant and I love her. I think she's just the sweetest and she's, you know, so intelligent. So she's here. I mean, I'm so excited to have you. I mean, because you're writing. You've done research. I mean, you're the package. You have an agent. There's a lot to discuss.
Thanks. I can certainly talk about one end of the process, and that would be kind of the beginning end of the process. I can't talk about being published because I'm not.
You will be though. That's coming. I mean, if you want to start at the beginning, my first question was, what got you interested in the romance genre? What got you interested in writing in general? I know we've kind of talked about stuff, but I mean, a little bit of context and background for people.
Yeah. I mean, I basically, I got interested in romance largely because, like so many other people, I was just really, really wanted to read books where I felt, as a reader, I felt safe. I felt like I knew I was going to have a happy ending. I mean, yesterday on the romance book love hashtag, we were talking about gateways, and a lot of people talked about how they came to romance because they read widely in a genre, say science fiction or fantasy or whatever, and they realized that what they were really there for was the romance subplots and the watching the couples hash out their issues and things like that. And I think that's very true for me. I used to be, and well, still am somewhat, a science fiction and fantasy reader. And so, for instance, Lois McMaster Bujold's Curse of Chalion and Paladin of Souls, which I love, have very significant romance, I guess you could call them subplots. And I just craved that. And so, and I had been thinking about writing a novel for some time. I kind of, my own relationship is basically parallels Persuasion, Jane Austen's Persuasion, just a little bit.
Which is one of my all-time, if not my favorite. I love Jane Austen. That is one of my favorite. I get so much.
Pride and Prejudice t-shirt. So
I can't, show it again. It was.
Okay. So it's the peacock cover. It's kind of faded by now, but it's, yeah.
She's the goddess divine. I love Jane Austen. She's everything. Mr. Darcy is my literary husband. I mean, Jane Austen, bow down to her brilliance.
Captain Wentworth is my guy. Poor wounded hero. But so my husband and I met when I was in law school, and we were kind of at different stages in our lives, and we broke up for 6 years, and then we got back together, and we worked it out. We've been married this next month for 15 years. What? Ladies, probably.
Oh, good for you. I mean, I'm like the 6-year separation. I mean, you're the real life second chance romance, and that's usually the thing that gets me. So, I mean, you're giving me hope right now.
Yeah. So it was definitely the case of the right guy, the wrong time. And so, I kind of wanted to write a modern Persuasion. So I sat down and I, banged out this manuscript finally. And the thing is, what gave me permission finally to write it was a realization that I didn't necessarily want to write really high-flown women's fiction. I wanted to write what I wanted to read, which was something that had an edge of humor to it, something that had some funny, awkward bits, and some, so in that particular novel, which will probably never see the light of day, let's be honest, because it was a first manuscript, and I learned a lot while writing it, but I don't think anybody wants to read my schoolwork.
I do. And you say, I think I want to read it.
It's not great. But so I banged out this manuscript, and in which I actually coined the term, at least to myself, Chekhov's bikini top, because when you've got a couple making out in a hot tub in the Bahamas, and he ends up, taking her top off, and they leave it floating in the jacuzzi. And when it's found by the little sister of the brother-in-law, that is in love with him also, or is crushing on him, and there's a blazing row about it. It's sort of like, if you leave a bikini top floating in the hot tub, as if Chekhov's gun, the wrong person is going to find it. So I learned a lot while writing that manuscript. I'm fortunate enough to know an agent. She's not a romance agent. She reps a lot of things. She actually reps my friend Tasha Alexander, who writes kind of romantic-y mysteries, Victorian mysteries. And she was kind enough to read it for me. And she's like, look, the good news is you can write a story. The bad news is this still needs a lot of work. And you need a critique group, and you should join RWA. And just because she's known me since I was about 4 years old, she's like, I know you, and I know you're not a joiner, but you need to do this. She's basically my Auntie Mame, okay? I
mean, it's true though. I mean, there's something really interesting about writers being in groups, because you have a bunch of introverts kind of gathered together. Yeah. There's something, interesting when you try to unpack that dynamic.
Yeah, and I like to call myself a performative introvert, because at one point somebody's like, oh, you're totally an extrovert. I'm like, no, I'm really not. And they're like, but you're so, your personality. And I said, I don't like people. I like applause.
I mean, I will tell you guys, I'll give you a little sneak peek into, so she did something during her presentation. She captivated the room, first of all, but she put her hair up in a clip, and then she took it down and waved it in this dramatic actress fashion, and the entire room just broke out laughing. And then that was, people were referencing that later on throughout the conference, saying, oh my goodness, you really set the tone. You were able to get the audience engaged. I mean, you just set it off on such a fun note. And but no, you really were able to kind of, you were outgoing, but yet you were, in command, and you were very professional. I mean, that's an interesting balance to be able to,
Thanks. Thank you. I like most people, like when complimented, I get super awkward. So yeah, where was I? What were we talking about?
We were talking about you being in your own critique group and, putting yourself out there.
Yeah, so basically I started getting critique on that book. I found a critique group through RWA and my local chapter, and I started getting critique on that book, and I started querying it, probably way before I should have. And I collected a lot of rejections, and I just kept writing. I wrote another Austen pastiche called Software and Sensibility. That might see the light of day someday. My agents read it, and
I love that.
He liked it, so we'll see. Then I was actually taking. I belong to a group of extreme Miss Fisher fans. If you haven't seen the Miss Fisher Mysteries, it's on Netflix. Just do me a favor, just watch it, because you'll love it. Anyone.
The only caveat with that is, for me, it was really hard to stop watching it. It was, I wanted to just keep watching.
So bingeable, yes. Yeah, I started watching it, I think, during Christmas break. So I was basically just like, badook, 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 next. My husband probably has, like, I think he's got the theme music tattooed on his brain.
Happy anniversary, honey.
Yeah. So I was taking a train up to New York to attend a weekend fan fiction, essentially writer's retreat. And I had these 2 books that I'd written that were in the bag. And I started thinking about Lady Susan, which is, of course, it was Whit Stillman did it as a movie called Love and Friendship. And so I started thinking about theater, because I'm a former actress, and I read some theater books, and I see people getting some stuff wrong, and I'm like, I could write in that world. I was there, and so I started thinking about, wow, God, Lady Susan as an actress would be like the best antagonist. And so I started thinking about, like all these theater romances, they all star actors as the principals. And why not write a book where the main couple is behind the scenes? So like he's the director and she's a stage manager, for instance. which is what I wrote, which was a friends to lovers romance. And long story short, I stopped querying the persuasion pastiche and started querying acting up. And that was what landed me my agent only a few months later.
I mean, so I have a couple of follow-up questions. I mean, you're so impressive, but so first of all, what did you learn writing that first manuscript that you wish you had known the first time around? Because you said you learned a lot writing the first manuscript, and so I mean, the first book I wrote, I was 18, and when I went back and read it when I was, 21, I was going, what was I thinking? It was, I mean, there was just so much, mostly kind of, it's really interesting to me looking back at it because I had all of the dialogue kind of wrong and there was just really choppy. So for me, it was a stylistic learning curve. So I'm curious what you learned from your first manuscript.
A couple of things that I can recall. I think I've internalized so many of the lessons now that I wouldn't necessarily be able to tell you what they are. Definitely one thing that the one thing that everybody said about that manuscript was it's too slow. You need to pick up the pace. You need to learn pacing. And that was very true. It's honestly spot on. And it's funny because I actually have tried to rewrite that book a couple of times, and it's really, I don't know what it is about it. It's not working for me. So that's why I say I don't think it'll ever see the light of day. The other thing about it is that I wrote it all because Austin. I wrote it all third person POV, but third person, not omniscient, but third person limited in her head only. And most people expect romance to be alternating point of view. And so, and I hadn't, I had honestly never even considered trying to write this particular book in an alternating POV. I don't know what it was. It just went, I was like, oh.
How do you feel about that though? Because sometimes, because I've noticed this too, because again, I've been studying the genre. For those of you who don't know, I've read a lot of these books. Like we're talking hundreds upon hundreds, I've probably reached, the maybe close to 1,000 thresh mark. I was typing up my bibliography of like books I've read for my project, and it's like 30 pages. Wow. So one of the things that I've noticed is that people will throw in like 3 chapters of the other person's point of view. So it'll be, 25 chapters except for 3. So it's almost as if they throw in those 3 to offset it. So I'm curious how you feel about the alternating point of views, because even though it's an expectation, should it be a necessity? I mean, is it limiting?
I don't believe it's a necessity. And I've read some very, very interesting books, mostly self-published, that were, for instance, all in his point of view or all in her point of view. And I think there's room for those. But I also, putting my marketing hat on, I know that when you've got reader expectation, if you want to sell a book, especially if you are a debut novelist, you kind of need to toe the line unless you're totally friggin' brilliant and for some reason have just have the most amazing manuscript on the planet and just can knock it out of the park and everybody's just going to give you a pass from the word go. They kind of expect you, I think the market kind of expects you to hit certain beats and hit certain marks in order to say, okay, we trust you. And I get that. I think that's kind of sensible, honestly. And then once you've established some credibility, and once you are, known and people, because that's what the thing is. I mean, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Why did I want to write romance? Why did I want to read romance? Because I wanted to feel safe. And until you get to know an author and can, take a leap with them, you're not going to go there with them. I think that the romance audience is very savvy about that, and I think it's their right to be, because we spend a lot of money on books. I mean, we are voracious readers. Plow through, some people plow through a book a day, and that ends up even at $1 a book. That's a lot of money. And not all books are $1 a book. So I think that that's fine. The other thing that I learned is that no matter how romancy I was feeling in my heart of hearts as I was writing a thing, I'm always going to get people apparently who say, this also kind of reads like women's fiction, and I kind of don't know where it lies. So they're again, marketing, putting on their marketing hat. What that's saying to me is they say, I don't know how I'm going to sell this. And again, that's very sensible, because as frustrating as I find genre limitations, and trust me, I find them deeply frustrating.
Oh, you're hitting a nerve with me, because to me, I think Outlander is my go-to example of how people try and say, oh, it's this, it's that. And, you know, you have an author who's very outspoken saying, no, this isn't a romance, even though they kind of want to market it as that way. And so there's issues when people want to not be considered romance because they think it's limiting, even though it's the best-selling genre. There's this, it's so strange. I don't even know how to phrase this as, you know, a sentence, because you have the best-selling genre, but yet I don't know if it's because of the literary respect or because of the criticism of the genre, but people don't want to be associated with it some of the time.
Women, female. Really, that's what it boils down to. I mean, time and time again, the marketing research can prove that women hold the purse strings. They make the buying decisions in a lot of different areas. For instance, movies. And yet, do we have female-led action heroes movies? No, we don't. Even though it's basically, we've got an entire marketplace with a lot of ready cash saying, we would like this. You know, we will go. We will be there on opening day for this. Ditto with romance. You can say, you know, it's a $1.3 billion a year industry. You know, numbers that would make any other genre weep if they got there.
I mean, if nonfiction were to have like a quarter of the success, I mean, the market would just be completely different space.
Yeah. So, but it's sexism. It is. So people don't necessarily, they don't know where my particular writing style fits sometimes, and that's especially true. So Acting Up went out on sub last year. It was out on sub for a year. It seemed to almost get some nibbles several times, and then didn't pan out. So we started working on getting a totally different novel. Because, by the way, I've written 4 books in the acting series. I wrote Acting Up, Method Acting, Acting Lessons, and Fast Acting, which is actually a novella.
You need to get these published. I'm telling you. I mean, I read, what was it? I think it was Losing It by Cora Carmack. I might be getting the name.
I'm not sure.
So the main 2 characters, he ends up being her acting teacher / coach, and she wants to be an actress, and so they're on stage, you know, they end up on stage together. So I mean, you tend to get the actors as the leads. So I really want the book when you say, oh, we have behind the scenes people, you know, bringing their love story to the forefront of the, you know, narrative. I want to read this book so badly.
So about a quarter of the editors that read this manuscript said, oh, theater books don't sell.
I almost feel like saying, unless it's the leads. I almost feel like tacking that on, like ... except
I don't know. They basically said books set in the theater don't sell. Lucy Parker seems to be doing pretty well. She's a good friend of mine. I don't know. Anyway, they're in the industry. I don't know. So, and gosh, that was getting close to bitter, which I really don't mean to be. You know.
No, I mean, I've been doing interviews for my dissertation, and I won't, you know, say who or what, but someone was writing a particular story, and it had to do with a certain profession. And, you know, as soon as she went to the publishers, and this was, I think, her 2nd or 3rd book, and, you know, she had a contract, they said, can you make it a sports romance? And she's going, that's not the profession I just wrote about. So there's this weird moment where publishers will kind of insert what they want or what they need instead of what the creator's putting forward. Right. And so, I mean, it's understandable that, oh, maybe we already have, you know, X amount of books in this genre or this category, and maybe we have like 8 second chance romances, but we only have 1 first love or something, whatever it is. Right. It might need diversity that way. But when you start to tell people to change the entire narrative or course of their book, there's kind of a little bit of hesitation or a moment of pause with that for me. Like, what's the thought process here?
Yeah, like I said, I haven't been in that position at all, but you know, it's an interesting business. It's a very interesting business, and you know, like, people who have been in it for years will tell you it's a heartbreaking business, and I totally believe it. Why I want to do this, I don't know. I love writing stories. I mean, I've had some people read some of my unpublished manuscripts, and they've said some really lovely things.
You sent me a document. I still need to read it. I need to read it when you sent me. That is coming.
I try to actually forget that I've sent anything to anybody, almost including my agent, so that when I get emails from my agent with the all caps title, in the, in the subject line, I actually still get like a sick little zing in my stomach, like, oh my God. It's just, I have a sad feeling that this will never go away. um, but yeah, and so we went out with Slow Drift, which is a completely different story. It's the other four were either novella or category romance. So it's three category romances, category length romances, and one novella. And this Slow Drift is definitely and solidly in the single title category in terms of length. And we went out and we were very rapidly rejected by 7 people who almost all of them said, this really does read very close to women's fiction. And so we kind of went, well, let's take it in a more women's fiction direction then. Let's see what happens there. So I, changed some things. I tinkered some stuff around. I made her job and her life a little more central, and the romance is still there and there's still a happily ever after. But we'll see. We're still in the back and forth process. In terms of, I sent a second revision back to her last week. So, well, I just try to keep an even keel about it, because it can be so easy to attach so much emotion and so much energy into the process. And the process is going to be the process. And once you've put your work out there in the world, unless somebody is giving you a revise and resubmit request, it's out of your hands. So you kind of got to just let it go.
At least I love your mentality of you're staying positive, you're keeping an open mind, you're not letting it get you down. I mean, that's great. And I really respect and admire that. I saw Natalie mention she's in the rewriting phase. And so one of my questions is going to be about your writing process, but now I'm curious about your revision process when you're editing. Are they different? Are they the same? How do you go about revising and writing? So I have 2 questions now.
Yeah, so my writing process and my revising process are polar opposites, because I am a rather dyed-in-the-wool pantser when I'm writing. I have an idea. I have characters. As a former actress, where I start from knowing people. Like, who are these people? What do they want? And what's in their way? And so the story itself kind of evolves out of those elements. And so and somebody once described pantsing through the pantsing, or writing by the seat of your pants process, as driving in a car at night and only being able to see to the edge of your headlights.
I like that. Where's that quote from?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't remember.
I love that though. That sounds really accurate.
And it went, yeah, because when I saw that, I went, that is what it is like. Is very much what it is like. So so when I'm writing, I'm really just kind of going every day, every scene by scene. What do these characters want? What's getting in their way? Be it external, internal, And I'm kind of learning to write tropes now. I'm on my 9th manuscript, and I'm only learning to write tropes now, which is kind of backwards, because a lot of people.
How do you feel about tropes, though? Because some people. So here's my thing. You have people who say, "Oh, don't write cliches, don't write tropes," but there's a reason people will pick up certain tropes. People kind of want tropes.
They absolutely want them, and tropes and cliches are different things. Tropes are expected story elements. Cliches are tired stuff you can see coming. I didn't ask you before if I can swear, so I didn't. I was about to, and I didn't.
You can. I'm not going to censor you. I'm not one of those people. Like, as long as you're happy, you're a nice person,
Yeah. Well, so yeah, tropes. I think every writer writes to tropes. I don't care if you're writing in genre, out of genre, if you're writing literary or whatever, what you're writing. I think there's probably going to be some tropey elements involved. There's just some that are much more recognizable. And so, for instance, I'm writing, as I mentioned at the BGSU conference, I discovered, to my amazement, because I was presenting on how to work with. Oh, I've got a cat meowing in the background.
I have a dog who's staring at me. So in a second, I'm gonna have to go grab the little guy.
So I'm a law librarian in my day job, and I did a presentation on working with a law librarian and how people write the law oftentimes wrong, because as I put it, they got their Juris Doctor from primetime TV university. They'll put in things like, "Oh, I won't press charges, officer." Well, good for you. That's not your job. That's the DA's job to decide who gets charged with something. And then I talked about working with a law librarian to figure out how you can make your fiction a little more realistic on the legal front. And I was thinking about things that always bugged me in books when I read them, and I'm like, no, that's not how this works. And I was like, hey, I'm going to take a sledgehammer to that old "I had to get married in order to keep my inheritance" trope. Oh, wait, it can happen. It's totally possible. Oh, wow. Not usually in the way I see it written, I'll have you know, or I'll point out, because like I read one book preparing, I read part of one book preparing for this particular presentation, because as I said in the presentation, one of the characters said that she didn't need help with reading the contract because she'd helped a friend study for the bar.
I love it when people say stuff like that. I mean, because you just cringe.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, close the library book, put the library book down, put the library book in the go back to the library bag. But that particular book had a gotta get married to keep the inheritance plot, and it wouldn't have worked because it wouldn't have held up in court, because the testator, the person who wrote the will, gave the dude a year to get married, and that would be too short based on my research. So I was like, 7 years was appropriate in a particularly seminal Pennsylvania case. So I was like, okay. I had these characters rummaging around in the back of my head. I'm going to write one of these things, and I'm going to write it within the law.
I was going to say, you're going to write it correctly. You're not going to let anything
marry anybody he wants, because you can't unduly limit the pool of people. And he's going to have 10 years to do it from the time where he's like 22, which is plenty of time, according to the case law. And oh boy, I'm having fun writing this.
I mean, how far along are you in this writing process? Because I'm kind of going, hey, now you got me curious. You're giving me.
Yeah, well, I've got about 56,000 words written out of about an 80,000 word target. The other thing that you asked me about writing and revising, I tend to write short and revise long. So in other words, I tend to underwrite in the initial process.
The dog just went behind the bookcase.
Oh no!
He's behind the bookcase now.
Relax.
I didn't even realize he could fit back there. There's about 3 inches of space. I knew he was little, but I didn't know he was that little.
You have a hamster, not a dog.
Apparently. I was going to say, I didn't know if you could hear the banging. He was trying to bury a bone behind the bookcase.
As one does, apparently.
Oh my gosh. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that that interrupted their time.
Not at all. No. So yeah, I write short, and then I find I add a lot more color and texture and depth when I revise. So, like Slow Drift, the book that is currently my agent and I are going back and forth on. It was an 80,000 word target. I think I hit it just about 80. Maybe it was 82 when it first went to her, and it's now 89,000 words. So, for reference, for people who are not who don't write, a standard Julie James novel is about 85,000 words. So, if that's helpful.
That's something I think kind of worth unpacking a little bit, is that there's kind of this shift in the industry in regards to word counts. You're kind of allowed to get away with shorter word counts almost today to a certain degree, depending on the line or the publishing.
You always could, ever since, and I'm not a history expert like my friend Elizabeth, who is she's amazing. So you might want to get her on, because she knows the history of the genre so well. And she's Elizabeth Lane. Category romance, ever since Harlequin introduced it has always been shorter. And yeah, we're seeing a lot more novellas and stuff nowadays, and I think the advent of self-publishing has really made that possible. Is it sort of widened the ability to think about word count differently, and I think that's kind of cool. I'm not a huge short story person personally. I liked a little more room and time to get to know characters and sort of live with them and whatnot. Although I have to say that shout out to my friend Olivia Dade, um, who wrote. I've I've only read one of the Rogue anthologies, and I think this was the third one. And she wrote just a beautiful short story in that one called "Cover Me," which is just it's lovely, it's absolutely lovely. And it took me the entire romantic journey in that short story, and I think that's uncommon for me. Um, and but yeah, so yeah, I think we're seeing a little more flexibility in word count, partially due to self-pub.
But I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. But you do want traditional. You are aiming for traditional, so you have that in mind when you're writing. When you know, hey, I have to reach this 80,000 word marker. That's my goal, because you have that in mind as you're creating your story, as you're going about your revision phase. So I mean, how many words? Because it kind of sounds like you're able to write, quite a few words at once. But then when you go back to edit, that seems to take you longer. Or am I misinterpreting that?
No, it's what it is it's not that it takes me longer, it's that I add a lot of words in the revision process. For a lot of people, the revision process seems to be, from what I understand from chatting with people, they end up with a really long manuscript, and their revision process is cutting, is trimming and weeding and cutting. My revision process usually looks like, wow, I've got an entire page of dialogue, and all these people are doing is talking to one another. I think I need to layer in a little more of the feeling and the nuance, like what's going on inside of the point of view character, what are they seeing in the room, what are they smelling, all of those sensory details. I tend to be like, I'm a former actor. I think about dialogue, and I can be a little too back and forthy, back and forthy, back and forthy. And so when I'm revising, I'm layering in those grounding the reader in the setting, in the scene, in the emotions of the character. And I'm learning to do it a little more as I draft from the get-go. I'm asking myself different questions as I draft now than I did when I started writing. But
I mean, I relate to that because I'm. It's not so much that I have just dialogue on the page, but I think because I myself am very practical and logical, I like things streamlined, and so I keep things almost too tight, where I do need to go back and add the details. That seems to be something I notice when I go back to expand. I'm always expanding.
yeah,
That's the biggest thing. I need to, build upon the scene, because usually it's just like I just get right to the heart of it. There's no build up. So I need to go back and add the build up. So that's my biggest thing that I've noticed. And it sounds a little similar to, going back to add things along the way.
by the same token, I have a friend who is a director of a dance company out in Portland, Oregon, and I've helped her edit her grant proposals, because if you want somebody to cut a lot of words out of your prose, I'm your girl. Because they have to be within very tight parameters in terms of like their answers to the grant questions. It's like, okay, it's supposed to be 100-word answer, and she's got 250 words. I'm like, let me in, coach. I've got it.
Oh, grants. I mean, if you're one word over, they'll just throw out your applications.
Exactly. So yeah, so I've used that power for good at times too.
Well, I mean, so when you're talking, so even then you're critiquing. So this was one of my questions that I wrote down. I have my little, paper here that I'm, jotting down my notes whenever you're saying something. I want to make sure I, go back to them. So you mentioned critique groups earlier, and so I hesitate with critique groups. First of all, you're very different than myself, I think, because you put yourself out there a little bit more. I'm very hesitant to share things, story ideas. I'm very protective of my babies.
Mm-hmm.
And so critique groups, you have to be ready to, it's kind of like you're putting the kid in first grade almost. You're getting them ready for the real world. And so I think that's a struggle for myself. But how did you find working with critique groups? Were there certain things that you wish you had known beforehand, or there certain things that you've learned from critique groups, whether it's the dynamics or things they taught you?
Yeah, well, a bunch of things. So first of all, I don't do an in-person critique group anymore. It was hugely, hugely valuable. It's just that in terms of my life and my scheduling, it didn't really work anymore. Um, but one of the interesting things about, first of all, as yes, getting critique is hard. It's very, very hard. You really kind of got to, you kind of got to be both soft and hard at the same time. You got to be soft to absorb the criticism, take it on board, examine it, see if it resonates with your vision. Sounds so high flown, but your vision for what you're doing. And you've got to be hard in terms of not taking it too personally. And oh, yeah, that's really, really difficult because it's your work. So how can you not take it personally? In that, having been an actress is really valuable, it turns out, because thank you, Mila. I don't know if you can hear that. Wow. So, my reaction to critique is kind of like, ooh, sometimes, ooh, ouch. So first of all, if you're giving critique, don't get personal. And that's only happened to me very rarely. Because I have been very lucky in most of the people I've worked with in terms of critique. But so don't get personal. Don't say nasty things about the characters. Don't say I hated her. Like say these aspects of her personality seemed a little too X for me. That's more constructive. And also, having been a former actor, hey, nobody's telling me I'm too tall or too heavy or too redheaded or too whatever. So it's really not personal from that perspective, and it used to be. I mean, for 10 years of my life, that it was Milo. No, sorry, I have a cat who suddenly decided that my furniture is a scratching post, and he doesn't usually do that. I think he's just being a stinker because I'm talking to you. And you don't get on the table either, you stinker. I've got a kid on a big wheel out front of my house, and I think they're all going, "Ooh, what the hell is that?" So yeah, my perspective on it is a little bit different given my background, but
I mean, I think part of my question is, so I originally, because I've done writing classes, so I think maybe I've had some bad experiences along the way, and so I think maybe this is kind of twofold almost, because I think maybe there should be genre critique groups, maybe, if this is, because you seem to have found one that was more focused on romance. Is that
definitely? Yeah, I found it through my RWA chapter.
Okay, well, I mean, that's awesome. I think that's actually really good advice right there. Don't just be like, I want a critique group. I think you need a genre-specific critique group.
Yes. Because if you're writing in the genre and people who are reading your work don't read in the genre, that can be a problem. I mean, one of my
experience.
One of my former critique partners wrote a lot of paranormal and fantasy, and I wasn't particularly well read on the paranormal, but at least knowing that and having read a lot of fantasy, at least, I was sort of like, is this an expected thing in shifter romances? Because I haven't really read them that much. And she was able to educate me and say, oh yeah, this is totally, you need these beats in order to sell a shift, for a shifter romance to land. But unless you're a genre writer, you don't know to ask that question necessarily. You might just say, oh, this seems, for whatever reason, negative comment. And so, like I have a friend who, she doesn't necessarily write romance, but she writes women's fiction. And I know she is in a very sort of mixed group in terms of the things that they write. And, I think her experience sometimes might be, I don't want to speak for her, but might be a little frustrating because she's writing for a specific audience that they don't necessarily read with it.
No, I think that's completely fair. I mean, that's kind of why I think I'm also hesitant. It's not just not wanting to put my babies out there, it's because I don't think I ever was in the environment to feel comfortable sharing my little babies.
No.
I mean, again, I started an MFA program and the teacher, I mean, at the time I was talking about young adult and romance, and they were like, what are you talking about? Why are you wanting to write young adult? Even though John Green was at, the pinnacle, his peak. And so it was very strange environment. They didn't really respect what I wanted to write or do. And so there was that issue. And then I remember being in a class in undergrad, and you have everyone writing different genres and different things. And so, when you say fiction, yeah, I wanted to write, something very specific that was very different than, the fantasy. And so when you have a group of people who are so different in one room, it's really hard to cater to that. and for you to really learn.
It's very hard. And so, yeah, I think if you're writing in a genre, you need to surround yourself with critique partners who write in that genre. And that the internet is fantastic for that, because you can find critique partners on the internet. It's not necessarily going to be a fast process. You really need to get to know people. That of course takes time, especially if you're on something like Twitter, where you're meeting, getting to know somebody in these little tiny short chunks. But I have found several people that I love and trust. One of them is my roommate at RWA, was last year and is going to be again this year, my critique partner, Lisa Leone. And we get, first of all, just getting back to the other thing about critique. Yes, genre is important. But the other thing is that getting critique partners you can trust who are there to make your work better is important. And that seems like it would be self-explanatory, but it's not, because there's some crappy people out there who just want to make themselves feel better by making you feel bad.
There's this I don't know if it's an account, it's a parody account, but it's like the guy in your MFA class, and they'll tweet those periodic things that the pretentious literary snob will say to you. And
aggravating. Yes. And those people are toxic, and you want to, as quietly or as loudly, I don't care, I'm not you, whatever is your style, you would want to not be with them, at least in terms of putting your work in front of them and getting their feedback, because a critiquer's intentions are important. If they're not there to help you make your work better, you can't trust them. And in order to have that softness that I was talking about before, to have that acceptance of the message, you need to be vulnerable and you need to be trusting. And if you can't trust somebody, no, I'm sorry.
I think you also have to be able to, at least for me, so again, kind of going back to that MFA experience. Mm-hmm. So I used to get emails leading up to the MFA event saying, oh, make sure you have your critique, in hand, you've read everyone's stories, you have your, notes printed out. And so when I went, I had read everyone's stories. And then there were some people there was like, oh yeah, I'll read it tomorrow morning before the class it was due. And I'm like, I just got, 10, 12 emails saying be prepared, write, read, and you're going to do it, rush job. That's not fair.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, and it's funny because I actually ran across the other day, I have a blog post. No, it wasn't a blog post, it was a Twitter stream about how I think it was about a year or so ago, and some people were being very entitled, not people I knew, but I was seeing it kind of cross my timeline on Twitter, is that people were being very entitled about critique, like, like, why aren't you turning this around, or why aren't you reading this, or why aren't you whatever. And it's like, look, dudes, critique is work. It's a lot of work. And even if you are 1000% enjoying what you're reading, and you would totally take my money give at this thing, your job as a critiquer, as I said before, is to make this thing better. So as a critiquer, sometimes one of the worst things that can happen is like you're sitting there and you just start to sink into it, and you realize you haven't made a comment in 10 pages. And that you got to go back and reread it, because that as good as it is, there's probably a way to make it better. And you stopped reading it with your critiquing hat, and you started reading it with your reader hat, and you just sank into the words and you enjoyed them, which is great. And sometimes that's it's a fantastic comment to get. Like I've gotten and given comments was like, I know I haven't made a comment in a really long time in this manuscript. It's just because I've really been enjoying it. But you still have to be in the critiquer's mind space at some point in this process in order to recognize that and to give that feedback. Because if there's just a lot of nothing, a lot of pages with no feedback whatsoever, as a writer, sometimes you wonder, did they skim? Did they not read this bit? Is it good? Is it so bad that they wanted to not, like, let us never speak of it again? You just don't know.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of CPU cycles that are being
Well, no, I love that you're able to look at it from your own personal perspective. Like, this is what I want if I'm getting critiqued. I want this. And so you're able to put that into your own critique for someone else. That's great. And
Well,
I think we should also throw in beta readers are not synonymous with critiquers. That's a different category. I just want to throw that out there.
yeah. And if you're looking for critique from your work, and I just critiqued a friend of mine's, and it was more of a beta read, but there was some critique thrown in there too. My friend Jen DeLuca's manuscript that she's working on right now, she sent me the manuscript, and she also at the same time told me, I don't want any line edits. I know the prose needs tightening. What I need right now is, does this work? Did I do something 2 chapters ago that this is completely contradicting? Are these characters consistent in their characterization? Big picture. That's what I want, big picture. And so as a critiquer, I knew that no matter how many times I might want to go, oh, move this comma. That's not what she wants. Don't give her that. Just give her.
She's that she's gonna get frustrated and go, oh,
yeah, no, be kind, rewind. Just sorry, that was a real oldism. Back from the days of
flashback, like Blockbuster Video, and like I used to rent things.
Yeah.
Dawson's Creek, he worked in the video store.
Right, exactly. So anyway, so if you are asking for a critique, let people know exactly what it is you were looking for. And then that is also work for the writer, because they have to understand what it is that they are expecting or desiring from that particular reading pass. Do you want line edits? Do you want no inline comments at all? Because one of the things I like to do is when I'm beta reading or critiquing, I like to do comments as I go along. Even if later on, like if I read this thing and I go, wait, where did this come from? And then 2 paragraphs later, oh, now I get it. I like to give very sort of in the moment, this is, as a reader, this is what's throwing me out of the story, or this made me laugh, or whatever, good, bad, or indifferent. Hopefully not indifferent, but, and then give basically sort of more of an edit letter overall, arching, here's what I thought in general of the story, overall it worked. This particular subplot seemed it could have used a little bit of gas here, whatever. But if that's not what the writer wants, that's not going to be helpful to them. So as a writer, you got to think about what it is you want from your critiquer.
I was going to say, we have some comments, and I don't know how long they've been there. So we have Nicole who joined us. Hi, Nicole. I love you. You're a sweetheart. We're making friends. People are meeting each other. Natalie and Nicole have social media followed each other, which is so cool. I'm like bringing people together online since 2014. So Lynn Turner. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Lynn. Oh, I just read Lynn's book. It's so much fun.
She's like, I'm not shallow, but sometimes I am. But that lipstick, though, I mean, you do have. I mean, I love the color of the lipstick. You're putting my kind of natural tone, matte finish, whatever this is, to shame over here. My h.e.a. bag is not standing up next to this.
Oh well, this was an old Birchbox find back in the day. It's Model Co. Stiletto.
I love it. I mean, I got this lipstick. I love how I left it out on the countertop, by the way. I don't even know why.
Mine's over there, over the map.
Yeah, this is a nude matte lipstick. I got this in one of my h.e.a. bags. And so we have a question from Lady Gizmo. Okay. And so I kind of relate to this one a little bit. This might be why I keep my baby safe. So she wants to know about people stealing your ideas or talking about your work online before it's even published. So how do you feel about that?
Honestly, writers are not at a loss for ideas. Writers, because I get the same thing from my mom. Don't do that. Somebody might steal your idea. It's like, Ma, writers all have ideas. They've got 17,000 plot bunnies stashed in notebooks scattered all over their house. The last thing they need is another idea. What they want is somebody to write the book for them. do the day-to-day, one foot in front of the other, one letter after the other grind of typing the damn thing out. That's what I want. So no, I mean, and because the people who read my stuff before it's published, obviously, because I haven't published anything yet, are all fellow writers, and they're all working on their own stuff, and they've got no interest in taking what I've done and running with it.
You have such a healthy perspective. You just reminded me. I remember one time I had a teacher who said, "Do you know how difficult it is to write a book? If you're going to steal someone's idea, I mean, you really have to really want to steal that idea."
Yeah, you really do. And you know, I've gotten to know the people that read my work, and you know, it's not like people are contacting me from out of the blue saying, "Hey, can you fling a manuscript at me?" Because I mean, for crying out loud, there's plenty of stuff out there to read. You know, from 99-cent sales to freebies to ARCs to the public library to whatever. You can read a lot and not lay out a lot of money. So so yeah, that does not worry me at all. And hell, you know, if somebody did, I've certainly got plenty of evidence that I did it first. So God forbid, I don't even want to think about that.
Oh, I just saw Lynn's comment. She loves you, and then she's like, the nude matte finish is also lovely. I wasn't fishing for a compliment, but thank you. I wish I was more, I mean, when I'm looking at how beautiful the red lipstick looks on you, I'm like, I wish I was more adventurous and I did that more often. I mean, I think I need to go buy the perfect red lipstick because you're inspiring me here to want to go buy and wear red because it just looks so pretty and bold. It pops. And then, yes, Nicole, I love her. Hi, best friend. She's so cute. And so the comment was about non-disclosure agreements so you could sleep at night. I'm like, I mean, I kind of get the for me it would be like keeping track of emails, I think, not necessarily the legal documents. And when it says non-disclosures, I was just thinking, you know, keep track of who you send things to and when they respond and things like that. I guess have a binder.
No. Honestly, no. Life's too short for that.
Oh, so now we have Kristen. She says she's a freelance writer and she's been asked to ghostwrite, get credit, and little to no pay. That does not sound good.
Oh, honey, please don't do that. No, because what are you getting out of that? Nothing. You know, it's like that's not even doing. I mean, it's a whole canard. It's a whole other canard. Like, oh, right, for the exposure. You got to do what you got to do, and you make your own decisions for you. But that's not even writing for exposure. That's writing for nothing.
I mean, I've seen and heard about people who want to write with big name authors. I mean, that's different than writing, you know, ghostwriting for, you know, a little nobody.
Yeah.
No. And then Natalie seems to agree with you. She says she has, excuse me, I have so many ideas that I need to learn to touch time finally. I mean, I swear I don't even know how I have, this is going to sound ridiculous. I have probably at least 20 different documents with at least 20 plus 30 plus thousand words. I mean, I have, I think, 6 things pretty much done at this point, but I'm still holding on and editing for dear life. I refuse to give them up until I'm officially ready. But I mean, yeah, writers, I think people who really love writing and they don't just want to say, I wrote a book, people who really are invested, I do think have multiple ideas. I think it's really hard not to have multiple ideas because as you're writing, you're going, oh, I should do this, but it doesn't really fit right here. So maybe I can save this for another book. And I think that continually goes on and on and on forever.
Totally agree. Totally. Yeah, it's funny too because I was chatting with Sarah Wendell 2 years ago at Baltimore Book Fest, and I just happened to mention that, you know, I said something about my she said something complimentary about my headshot, and I said, oh, well, I'm really lucky. My brother is a professional photographer. His bread and butter at the time was wedding photography.
Oh, sure.
Moved more into a commercial vein now. It's Brian Adams Photographics. Anybody who wants to take a look at his stuff, it's gorgeous. And so she's like, oh, she's like, oh, your brother's a wedding photographer and you write about love. And I'm like, yeah, and our cousin's a singer-songwriter and she sings about love. And Sarah looked at me and goes, that's a series.
I would read that.
Yeah, right. So that's been knocking around the back of my head for 2 years. I haven't even touched that idea. So yeah, we have ideas. They happen.
Oh no, and I guess we struck a nerve with the ghostwriting comment, the movie with Ewan McGregor. Every time I see his name, I just either think of him as Obi-Wan Kenobi or Nicole Kidman. And so then Lynn, a lot of X's and O's, and I don't know what comment that was in regards to, but she apparently hugs and kisses you.
Lynn and I have decided we're cousins because our families are both from Ithaca. And so we've decided that we're cousins and that's it. We're just, yeah, we're related. our DMs are like these incredibly long, rambling, like responding to the comment 5 comments ago, and somehow even with all the antecedentless pronouns, we figure it out. I have no. She and I both have brains like 2 cats in a bag, and that's yeah.
Oh, she's your Nicole. Nicole's my best friend. Oh, so cute. I mean, I love Nicole. I love her. And she's your Nicole. And so now I'm like, hey, Lynn, it's like your friend.
My lobster. to harken back to Friends.
I mean, even now you're still writing. You have 3 more books that you potentially go write if you write your own series inspired by your own life.
Yeah, and it's funny because I know one of the things that I've heard about New York publishing is they definitely don't want books about writers because they deal with them every day.
I was going to say, I don't know. That seems untrue because I think there are a lot of books about writers. I read so many books about writers. It's almost as if, I mean, it's not self-fulfilling prophecy or anything like that, but I mean, I've read so many books. I mean, even Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell there. I mean, we had fan fiction. So, I mean, there's all different types of writing. And then I always see, I mean, there's so many novelists, and even on the show, The Affair, he's a writer. I mean, there's so many stories about writers. I mean, I understand why they might say no, but it's almost as if they just keep making them anyway.
I don't know. It's in some ways it seems like it would be a rather extreme form of navel gazing, but I don't know.
I feel like we answered some of my questions indirectly because I had asked about, I'd been writing down, oh, what's her novel about? She told us that. I didn't even have to ask, which was great. So I'm just curious, favorite trope to write or read? Favorite trope or just favorite thing about romance books? Characterizations.
There's a lot of tropes that I really love.
Also, people in the comment section, tell us. Comment away and tell us your favorite tropes. I'm curious.
Yeah, do. I am kind of itching to write an enemies to lovers because I know for me it would be a stretch, like a real stretch. I tend to write people who get along really well, and I tend to be kind of emotionally a little too well adjusted. And I need to bust that up with a sledgehammer a little bit and work on that.
That's hard. That for me is a really hard one. I mean, I know you have your own second chance love story, but for me, second chance love stories and enemies to friends and friends to lovers, I think those are really difficult to write truly well because there's so many variables and obstacles that you have to account for as the writer. I feel as if you're responsible for a lot of things. So how do you foresee that in your little head? Do you have a story, or just think this is a great trope that you want to implement?
It's just one I really want to play with because I personally, there's that moment when you're reading something or you're watching something and you go, oh my God, I hate this character. And then there's this moment where you see just a little bit of something and you go, oh, you're going to make me love this character, aren't you? And I hate you for it and I love you for it. Like for me, the pinnacle of that was Damon in the Vampire Diaries. I'm watching that show and I'm like, oh my God, he's such an asshole. I hate his guts. And, you're gonna make me love him, aren't you? And I want to make somebody do that.
I think part of that was also not only was he kind of the anti-hero, was he the villain sometimes, but he also had like that bad boy persona going from a little bit. He was a lot of tropes and a lot of characteristics.
And I'm not a fan of bad boys. Okay, I dated a bad boy, and he's not a no. I de-romanticized that sucker back in my 20s. I have no. I'm not one of those people who goes, "Oh, I love a bad boy." No, I'm sorry. No. If you are an emotionally compromised man baby and you are flaming out and having tantrums, or you're being a possessive jerk, or you are selfish and ignoring and there's no glimmer of anything else, I don't care what your job is. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how big your package is. I don't care about any of that. I'm not going to read your story because I don't like you.
I mean, I feel as if the Playboy is kind of a branch off of the bad boy too. Those two to me end up rolled up into one. And whenever there's the Playboy archetype, I just always kind of go, oh. Why are you doing this to me right now? I don't know. That one really bothers me a lot.
And I've learned, like, for instance, that most rock star books are just not for me.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. I just had to read one because I have lists of books and I'm trying to read certain tropes, I'm trying to read certain archetypes and characteristics, and if certain things are rated on Goodreads and have a lot of reviews, or just I have all these characteristics and things that I'm looking for because I'm trying to be so well versed in my study.
Yeah.
I just read one and oh my gosh, I was so uncomfortable the entire time. I took credit for it on Goodreads. You guys can go see the book that I'm talking about, but oh my goodness, it was skin crawling. It was so uncomfortable. I would not recommend it if my life depended on it. I was just, no.
Yeah, I had one. It was a Rockstar book, very popular series. And I started reading it. I started listening to it, actually. And I was really, sad thing is I love a really good audiobook. Love a really good audiobook. And the narrator was really good. And I was just like, Jesus, this guy is ticking every single box in the signs that he's an abusive personality checklist. No. This is not romantic. This is scary. Scary. And so, yeah, I didn't finish that one. And
there's a book that everyone loves, and I don't know how y'all feel about this. I don't know if you've read this, but it's calling to me. It's called Beautiful Disaster, and it has every single red flag, and it makes me so uncomfortable. This is one of those books where like I just had to push myself, and it has such great reviews. And I don't know if that makes me sad, but you just reminded me of that reading experience because I love how we both have the same kind of irksome.
Yeah, and I mean, some people read. I do understand that some people read for different reasons. You know, sometimes they read to reclaim their agency over somebody like that. Like they see that person eventually redeemed or whatever. And so I'm not saying, oh, never, and nobody should ever read these books. I just wanted to be very clear that I'm speaking from my personal experience. This is not a character that I am interested in reading about.
Well, so on the flip side, what is your favorite type of character to read about? Instead of least favorite, what is your favorite?
Gosh, so I really do like emotionally fluent people. I of course I like them flawed. I like them to be people, but I like them to be actually thinking and intelligent and working through their issues, rather than always just reacting to things and not thinking. I mean, of course, the occasional reaction. People get angry. People flip out. People say things that in the heat of the moment. All of that does happen. But if that's all they're doing, I'm not interested in reading those stories. I'm interested in reading stories where people are adults and that they're actively trying to be better people as they come together.
I love that answer. You're making my little reader heart so happy.
Well, hopefully someday you'll get to read my books and you'll like them.
Okay, so Lady Gizmo, I don't know how long she's left, but it says good night. So good night, Lady Gizmo, and I don't know if Nicole is saying good night to Lady Gizmo or she's leaving, but if you're leaving, Nicole, I love you.
So we hear the sound of ice because my husband's refilling my drink.
Oh, hi, husband.
He's waving.
Aw. I was going to say I can't see him with the camera.
He's not getting on camera.
No, so Lynn has a comment. She agrees with you. You and Lynn are, I think, like me and Nicole.
I told you we're cousins.
Can't write heroes who are such cute jerks, but I'm supposed to accept that he's going to be different with a heroine. Yeah, that's one of those things. He's terrible to everybody. He's even terrible to her, except in the ending.
Oh, so from my own personal experience, I mean, I had this conversation with my mom. This was years and years and years ago. It's way prior to getting married, honey. Way prior to getting married.
Was this during the 6-year separation, or is this before?
He was actually even before the 6-year separation. So yeah, this is.
I made him laugh. I heard his little.
Yeah. One of the reasons why I married this dude is that when he lets loose, he's got the biggest damn laugh you've ever heard in your life. It's amazing. Not like that.
That's so sweet, though. You love his laugh. That is like the sweetest, nicest, kindest thing to anyone.
He first grabbed my attention because I said something that was intended to be funny to my best friend, because he and my best friend went to college together, and I met him, and our first impression of each other was not great. That.
I was gonna say, I just heard the laugh.
A little bit of it. That's a little bit of it. So we the three of us went out to breakfast, and by then I'd written him off because he'd been kind of rude to me. And so I said something that was intended to be funny to my best friend, who I've known since I was 5 years old. Okay, so we're dialed in, right? She was 4, I was 5. He just held up 4. I'm like, no, I know my history. I was 5, she was 4. And so
it's cute that he knows that level of detail. That is just awesome that he pays attention and knew to hold up the 4 fingers.
Being married for 15 years. So I say something that's supposed to be funny for Maria. Dude, who I've completely written off, literally throws his head back and laughs so loudly that everybody in the brunch restaurant turns and looks. And I was like, oh, somebody's in there.
Well, I mean, I think I really appreciate that, because when I have a laugh when I get really surprised that's very high pitched, and I've been made fun of for my laugh. So I think it's so utterly adorable that you love him with his laugh. I think from a personal perspective, just really appreciate that.
Enormous, unself-conscious, booming laugh. And I was just like, oh, okay. As somebody who tries to be funny, it's always, like I said, I don't like people, I like applause.
And you have the perfect. Yeah. So I was like, we're totally off track. Oh. I love the little tangent digressions, though. You're so sweet and you're so much fun to talk to. So what advice do you have for aspiring writers, or aspiring romance writers in particular? What advice do you give? What would you say, like, to yourself when you first started writing that you wish you knew, or just impart some wisdom?
So I've got 15% left. Bye, honey. I've got 15% left on my battery, by the way. One of the things that I did, not even knowing I was going to do it, wasn't a conscious thing, is that I'm always off when I finish something, I start something new. I don't dwell. That's why I have 9 manuscripts, or I'm working on my 9th manuscript. And that's something another fellow writer who signed with her agent around the same time I did. She only really had 1 manuscript in the hopper, and then when that manuscript didn't sell, she was kind of like, oh, well, I've got to start from scratch now. So I got a bunch of stuff that I can either present to my agent or rework and then present to my agent or whatever. I've got a body of work.
And the dog, Max, is like, yes, I agree with her.
Max. So that's, I think, my biggest piece of advice is to not write a manuscript and stop. To keep going.
I don't know if you hear that growling. I shifted and I accidentally hit the bone, and apparently he thinks he's good now, so all bets are off. Then Natalie, she says she likes people to feel real in her books, even if it's fantasy, and I love that. I think especially if it's fantasy, you need to keep it grounded in reality to some degree.
Yeah.
And then Lynn is saying, OMG to Kristen up above, humanizing the wrong people. So I think you hit a nerve there, little miss, with your answer. People seem to really agree with you.
Okay. I mean, I can literally only speak for myself as a writer and as a reader.
I love that piece of advice, though. I think that's, because I really appreciate your perspective, because you're being business savvy, you're being aware of the industry, and you're
learning.
But even still, you're very well educated and you're very eloquent with these answers. I mean, you're very aware of the industry and your own personal, kind of experiences, endeavors. You know what to keep in mind.
Well, and that, like I said, I didn't start that way. I mean, I literally kind of flung myself at this to start with. And then I had like various critique partners. I was starting a new book and she said, well, what are the tropes? And I'm like, I don't know. I have to start from that. Okay. So there's no, I mean, there are checklists and there are books you can read, and I'm not a huge fan of craft books personally. I think oftentimes they're very self-contradictory.
Mm.
Um, but so there's probably people out there who've like read all of the craft books and have all the rules and all that, and I've kind of learned some of them the hard way by being kind of a bird flying into the window too many times. Um, but and I mean maybe that's why sometimes my work reads more like women's fiction because it's not as tropey. I mean the book that I'm working on right now is tropey as fuck, and I'm having so much fun with it.
I mean,
But
I love tropes though. You're having fun writing, and you just got your whole disposition just brightened. Like, yes, I'm writing a trope. I mean, you just got so excited, and so that makes me excited as a reader.
Fun. It's really fun. And I mean, actually, I talked about my best friend, and the personality of the female main character is a little bit based on her because it's I'm writing an Italian American character from Boston, and that's my best friend is her family's from Boston. She and I grew up in New Hampshire, but
That's my mom's. I mean, I do not look Sicilian whatsoever, but like that was my mom's side of the family. I could help you with that one.
Yeah, exactly, right. So yeah, I mean, but I'm having fun with it because I know that I'm writing within that trope and within that structure. Structure can be really liberating to work within, super liberating, because some of those you don't want to have to make all the decisions. You want to have to make some decisions.
And you still get that happily ever after.
Still get the happily ever after. You'll always get that with me.
So I don't know what the conversation was because I think I'm missing some of the stuff.
Well, if Lynn's in the mix, she's talking a lot. I'm sure.
I love her comment. I don't know what this is in regards to, but it says, while I know we're not the only ones reading romance, the majority of readers are women, often very young women, and it should be a safe space for us. And I just want to do that, like, bow down, praise be. That is the best comment. I want to take a screenshot of that. I love it.
And that's one of the reasons why the Rockstar book that I mentioned earlier concerned me. And I don't want to be like, oh, here's Auntie Adele to keep you, who's going to be all patronizing. But you see people say, oh, Mr. Rochester Mr. Rochester was scary. Okay.
Thank you for saying that, because I've said that and someone's going, oh no, you just don't understand it, sweetie.
No, I get it. I get it. He locked up his wife. He tried to get Jane to enter into a bigamous marriage.
That's what I said. I said anything.
That's not cool. No.
That was my exact response. I'm like, he kept his wife locked up. I understand there were mental issues there, but she was still a prisoner in her own home. We're not going to ignore that, are we?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm actually going to move because otherwise, if I don't plug in, we're going to lose me. Second.
You get to see the beautiful painting in the background.
My house, kind of in the background. My kitchen. Oh, there we go. Oh, and we've got Mr. Pickle.
We're doing this vlog style. I love it.
Exactly.
An insight into the life of Adele Buck. I love it.
Yeah. So, tour of my house.
I love how husband's not around. He's like,
well, husband's in the basement. Are you kidding? I mean, we don't actually do the man cave situation because I need to plug in. I'll send you.
I love how as soon as I said that, then he pops up.
Of course. I'm going to turn on one more light. I'll be right back.
Yeah, so in the meantime, do you guys have any questions for Adele or anything specific about romance that you'd like us to talk about, or any questions specifically about how to write romance? So if there's something that you want us to discuss or something you want us to touch on, please comment away, because we have a brilliant brain that we get to pick.
Bless your heart. I don't think so. But this is Pixel.
Oh my goodness. My heart just
My brother nicknamed him Pickle. And so now we call him Pickle more than we call him by his real name.
Oh my goodness, those eyes. Well, I mean, I follow your animals on Instagram. I know you have that. So I follow them. They're just so cute. I have the dog, but he's got his bones, so I'm not gonna go near that.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with that mojo. I can't even remember what we were talking about. Are there any questions?
I'm gonna type it. Questions. Yes, people love your cat. Natalie's like, nice cat.
He's lovable. He's
oh my
got,
goodness,
huh? He's got the thwoppiest tail. Tail is just constantly lashing and thwopping and doing all kinds of
crazy. I'm pretty sure he's bigger than Max though.
He probably is. He's about 9.5 pounds.
Yeah, Max is he's kind of like 4.5, 5.
What?
He's 5 pounds max. Like, cause
oh my god,
he's a really bitty.
And Pixel is not a big cat actually. He's
you hold him like a little baby. It's so cute.
I train all my cats so that they're comfortable being held up like a baby. Yes. Hi. Yeah. This is very exciting podcasting, YouTubing material here.
A mixture, it's combination. So, I mean, we're not getting any, people apparently don't want to ask romance-related questions. I'm curious if I have any more myself. The dog's gonna bark. This is gonna come. Someone just made noise. I'm surprised he's not already barking. No, I mean, I'm still just very glad someone else agrees with me about Mr. Rochester.
Oh.
I think they romanticized.
So today, the New York, it was the New York Times, what's it called? Book Notes, I think it is, column, actually had the same opinion. So we're not alone. We're not alone. But yeah, the Rhett Butlers of the world, the Mr. Rochesters of the world, the Mr. De Winters, Max De Winters of the world. I'm sorry, no, thank you.
Well, have you been seeing? There have been a slew of articles, and I've been tweeting them on the Romantics at Hart Twitter account, the book club that Nicole and I started. She named it after me, which is I still think like the cutest thing in the world, and
you have the perfect name. Come
on. But yeah, I've been tweeting all the links. So there has been this new kind of I don't want to call it a trend, but there's been a lot of articles talking about how fiction or how romance writers are changing how they write their alpha heroes in the wake of the Me Too movement. So I've seen a lot of people just commenting. I haven't really seen a content analysis or anything to that degree, not an academic study, but I haven't seen people at least address this as an issue, which is, you know, it's kind of the start. Open up the conversation, open up a dialogue. So I'm curious if you had any thoughts on that one, because that seems like kind of something on the periphery of this discussion.
Well, first of all, academia takes a while to catch up with stuff. So I'm sure we won't see analyses of this for a long time. And I'm not an academic in your sphere, so maybe pop culture academia moves a little bit faster than other types of academia. I know that in my particular sphere of academia, which is law, the advice I give to people who are looking for journal article topics is look at what general education was talking about 10 years ago, and it will be very cutting edge in law because we are very slow.
No, I mean, for academic journal articles, I think the turnaround time is 6 to 8 months at least. And it's going to take you a few months to actually write and research the piece. So, I mean, I myself am trying to figure out a particular study at the moment, and it is just, in addition to my dissertation, I'd like to do a scholarly article, and it's not an easy undertaking. You know, if you guys want to go in academia, good luck. I wish you the best. I mean, I know it's not easy for myself, so it's going to be a deal, but at least this is a conversation.
Yeah. So in terms of that, I'm not really the right person to ask because I'm mostly not a fan of the alpha hero, as you could probably read between the lines of my earlier comments. That being said, I'm currently re-listening to one of possibly the alpha hero books, which is Lord of Scoundrels. And I think one of the reasons why I like Loretta Chase's alpha heroes is because her heroines are always at least 5 steps ahead of those heroes.
Her heroines,
those heroes might be alpha in every other area of their lives, but when it comes to her, they are puppy dogs on their back looking for a belly scratch.
I love that imagery right there. That was
and the thing is, as the reader, she writes them so beautifully because as a reader, you can see it coming. They're still out there thinking, oh, but I am Lord Beelzebub and I'm the baddest, and you're like, you are the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and you are done, dude. and she really lets the reader have that kind of moment of you think so, don't you tried it.
This is my English, self coming forward. I feel as if there's a dramatic irony because you as the reader have this kind of knowledge that some of the characters don't. And so that makes me really happy. I'm like, yes, we're justifying the romance. It's well written here when you have these moments like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and by the way, so I have so my blog, my little plug for my blog is adelebuck.com, and one of the things I've started doing is amassing recommendation lists, and it started a while ago because I as a former actor, as somebody who's even dabbled very, very little bit in voiceover, in narration, I really, really like a very well narrated audiobook. I have a deep appreciation for people who can read a book and both disappear into it and also enhance it via their narration. And so I wrote a blog post that is basically here's a bunch of narrators that I just think really knock it out of the park. And then what I've also done is I've since gone on to sort of curate lists that I crowdsource on Twitter of, one of the things of books in specific areas. So for instance, books with what I label, and it's a convenient but non-specific and sometimes troubling label, and always in quotes, difficult heroines. I love a book where the heroine is angry, she is prickly, she's been given it, the life's given her a shit sandwich. She's not eating it anymore, damn it.
And that fights the damsel in distress, early body stripper motif, kind of characteristic motive there.
So basically my blueprint for this is Victoria Dahl's Grace Barrett in I think it's a book called Close Enough to Touch, I think. Terrible titles. But anyway, Grace Barrett is...
If you guys want Adele's, I'm just going to let them know. Down in the description box, I linked your Twitter, Instagram, and your website. So if you want to go follow her and see these blog posts, make sure you go check it out. It is linked right there for you.
All the recommendation list. There's a master list of recommendation lists, and it's right in the header underneath the title graphic. So if you want to look at those recommendation lists, I have a master page that links to all of those posts. And so and this was the first crowdsourced recommendation list that I did. And I was like, hey, I had a conversation with some people on Twitter. It's like, those of us who really like these, quote unquote, difficult heroines, a lot of romance readers, they want their heroines to fall easily into love and to think the hero is everything from the moment they meet him, I guess. And, I don't want to put words in people's mouth, but they look at these kind of heroines and they go, oh, I didn't like her. Or she was a bitch, or she's just this or that. And I'm like, okay, you have your preferences. That's great. You and I probably are the Venn diagram of the books that we appreciate might be two independently perfect circles. I have no idea. But I really like these books where people label the heroine as a bitch or too aggressive or too whatever. Can anybody tell me some of their favorites? I'm here to tell you, honey, I came up with over 100 of them. Yeah.
That is quite a list.
It's a huge list. And then, so it's funny, I just amassed this long list that basically I did as it came in. And then, so I did a second blog post. They're both linked to one another, by the way, where I said, okay, and the librarian in me is being driven crazy by this long homogenous list. Here it is by subgenre. And I went and looked at all of the descriptions and categorized them in this different blog posts. It's like, you want paranormal? Here you go. You got paranormal. You want contemporary? Great. You want historical? Great. And all of that. But it's been really fun to go through and find people who like these different things, or I did one where people take a particular character type and they subvert it. So for instance, as we discussed earlier, I was really sick of rock stars behaving badly. I'm like, give me some rock stars who are actually sweethearts, who are emotionally not 15. Give me some werewolves that want belly scratches. give me some characters who are completely backwards of what you expect them based on their job or their title or their role. And so that was another great list of like, oh yeah, I've read that one, or oh, that looks really amazing. So I've got these lists that I love amassing, and they're all on my blog. Excuse me.
Oh no, I mean, I love that. I mean, I've been on your blog. I mean, you have a beautiful website, and then you just mentioned that you redid it. It's even just stunning. I love it. I mean, it's even better than before, and I didn't know that was possible.
Ainsley Payton made that header image for me and made that logo type for me. And oh my God, Ainsley, thank you so much. Mwah.
We do have a question. I think this is it actually dovetails quite nicely because I feel as if the heroines that you're kind of alluding to have a realism element. So Natalie's question is, what is the best real life romance you've seen happen in the news or whatever you think will make a good book? She's asking you specifically. So any romances that you've seen that would be good for a book? Aside from your own, because I think your own is actually a really good a really good second chance love story right there.
Well, that's what made me want to write my first book. So that's, yeah. So that I've already done that, even though I didn't write my own story. I'm going to take a pass on Meghan and Harry because they're just too obvious. Oh my God, these two. They're too wonderful. And I'm gonna kind of detour sideways, and I'm gonna say Kira Sedgwick and Kevin Bacon.
Oh my goodness, I think they're one of the few golden couples left in Hollywood.
Yeah, and oh God, if they split up, I'm gonna have to take a week off and cry.
My old golden couples have all split. I used to think Jenny Garth and her husband from 90210. I used to love Jenny Garth, and then that happened. I was like, okay, we lost one golden couple. Right. And every time I have a golden couple, they seem to fall. Right, so please don't let anything happen to these two. Like, keep them together. They're national treasures.
Not only that, but they are at least my age, if not a little bit older. And when the last manuscript I wrote was actually, so I'm 49. And so the last manuscript I wrote, I was like, I'm going to write a 40 plus. Why didn't I not think of this before? And I did. And that was a lot of fun. So I think writing a couple that had been together in a very, very high stress, very high intensity focus industry would be really interesting. Excuse me, my voice is starting to go. So yeah, I'm going to go with those two.
I love that answer. I wasn't even thinking of that. I saw that question. I'm going, I don't even know how I would answer that because, again, I saw Christian answered the royal wedding. And so, I mean, I've already seen a lot of things pop up because, again, I try and really stay up to date with everything going on in Romancelandia. And I've seen so many books already come out inspired by them as soon as they announce their engagement. And then the month leading up, the self-publishing on, that Kindle app, oh my goodness, people love that royal wedding.
Yeah. No, and it was tremendous. And I mean, the funny thing about being a romance writer is that, oh my God, you get into a group of romance authors and you will never find a more hardened group of grumpy cynics than a bunch of romance writers. And yet we will also be like, oh God, Chris Evans is Captain America. I just can't. Or just lose it. And
the husband there for this conversation.
Yeah, and so it's this funny dichotomy where you're dealing with people who are just like, really? Because I mean, what do we do if we're really doing our job right? We're unpacking and unpeeling some of the really difficult parts of what you need to do to make a relationship work, the things you need to overcome to make a relationship work, the ways you have to open yourself up that are scary and difficult and harrowing, and all of that takes kind of a hardened cynic in order to take a good cold look at that.
I was gonna say, I think we're kind of alluding to, or at least this is what I'm kind of getting from you, the insta love. This is kind of a harder. I mean, there's insta lust, but the insta love, I think we're kind of hitting on the, if you were mentioning your difficult heroines. Well, she's not going to fall, head over heels in love with a guy upon first sight if she's a difficult heroine.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. Or if she does, that's going to be in the prologue and she's, 16 and she learns better. But yeah, no, I know I've read some insta love that has surprised me. The one thing I can say about tropes that I don't usually love is that generally speaking, there's gonna be a writer who writes it and makes, and similar to that, oh, I hated this character, you're gonna make me love this character, aren't you? Comment that I made earlier. It's gonna be like, oh, I usually hate this trope, and boy, damn it, this is working for me. And for me, the ultimate example of that is Courtney Milan's Trade Me. Because billionaire heroes, please get out. For me.
He's not a millionaire, he's a billionaire.
New adult. Not for me, very usually. First person narration. I can get there, but usually it used to be almost an automatic no. And I think there's a couple of other things in that book that would normally for me be like, this is a package of fail. But that book is on my favorite shelf. It is absolutely such a great book. And so when a really good author can take a package of elements that be they tropes, be they characters, be they whatever, package them together, put them together in a skillful and compelling way and make me love something that I would normally dislike intensely, I love it all and more.
I love how there's this personalization of romance where you can cater to the tropes that you enjoy. And I love how you picked up a book that you weren't expecting to like, but it resonated with you. I think there's something about romance where you can have your personalized, okay, I know I love my first love stories over here. I know I love this author, auto buy. And then you took a chance and it worked out for you. I mean, Courtney Milan, I've been following her on Twitter for Cockygate, and even with the Forever trademark that just happened. I mean, she's brilliant, as a person, as a lawyer, and then she's brilliant as a writer. So, I mean, just kind of got to give her a lot of shout out with love.
Oh yeah, Courtney is amazing, and yeah, that's a given. But it's funny because I was listening to Smart Bitch's podcast when she was on at one point, and she was talking about that she hadn't put that book out yet. She was talking about how she was chatting with a friend, and she said, I'd never write a billionaire romance unless it had this, and I'd never write unless it had this. And by the end of the conversation of her going, I wouldn't write this except unless I did it this way, she was like, oh crap, I have a book.
And that's the one that you loved.
And I was listening to this podcast. I was, doing my exercise walk, and I was listening to this podcast. I was going, I need to buy this book when it comes out because this sounds amazing. And it was all because of those accepts. It's like and it gets also back to that subverted archetypes idea that I love the idea that you take something that usually plays out in this particular way, and the author sends it on a U-turn and sends you in a direction that you never expect in your life, and it's delightful. And for that, okay, the book that I adore for this, and it's not technically romance, but there's a lot of happily ever afters in it, is Stella Gibbons' Nightingale Wood, which is one of my favorites of all time.
I haven't read that one yet. It's on my to be read list. I actually think I have it on my my Kindle.
Oh goodness gracious! It is basically a Cinderella story, and almost nothing that you expect happens, and it makes me so happy. It's such a great book. It's so skillful. It's so affectionate and tender and cynical and hard-eyed and clear-eyed at the same time. I love it. And I've read it multiple times with my eyeballs. I've listened to it multiple times. The narration, if you can find it, because it's not on Audible anymore. I think the rights went south or something like that in the US. But if you can find it like on CD in your library or whatever, do, because it's fantastic. The narration is by Carol Boyd, who's a fantastic narrator. It's one of those books where it's like you think, oh, okay, this is the thing that's gonna happen, and it's like, oh wow, I didn't see that coming.
I mean, which is also a little different. I mean, I know you said this one wasn't technically a romance genre, But I mean, a lot of times people want that kind of safety net, but I think the safety net is just the happily ever after sometimes. I think sometimes that's the only safety net you'll get, and they'll take you on the ride along the way.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about romance is that you a lot of the enjoyment of the genre for me at least is how are you going to get there? I mean, it's like when I first read, when I think when just about any reader first reads Sherry Thomas, it's like, how are you gonna get out of that one? It's like watching an escape artist in a tank full of water, wrapped in chains. Okay, I'm pretty sure they're gonna live, but how?
And we have a question from Kristen. She wants to know your favorite fictional ships.
Favorite fictional ships, as in
fictional relationships.
Relationships.
I don't know if this is supposed to be for TV, books. I mean, but who's your favorite couple, fictional couple?
Favorite couple? Well, for TV, I have to say it's got to be Miss Fisher and Jack Robinson, just because we just so want to see these two get together. That's a little obscure. In terms of fiction, it's probably, getting back to Persuasion, it's probably Anne Elliot and Captain Wentworth.
Documented Jane Austen Hart. I love it.
Yeah.
I watched the earlier adaptation a couple weeks ago, and I was just so happy just sitting there.
The Amanda Root and Karen Hines movie that I've bought in multiple formats. Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah, because I think I so feel for Anne. She's in such a sort of an iconic women's position. And one of the things I actually really, and I don't know if they did it intentionally, one of the things I really appreciate about that movie cinematographically is that a lot of it seems to be filmed, the camera seems to be positioned from a seated position almost, which is where women would be perceiving the action. It's kind of like looking up at things. And so much of, like there's scenes in that movie where they have a montage of Anne waiting for news to come back from when is it Louisa? Who falls and hits her head, from when Louisa has hit her head and they're not sure if she's going to recover and all that kind of stuff. And so there's this montage of her in the house just kind of floating around waiting. And so much of women's lives were about waiting for stuff to happen to them. And so I feel for Anne, so deeply. And yes, she was a privileged woman of a privileged class, had, lots of things that she did not have to deal with and all of that. But so much of women's lives, even to this day, happen to them instead of have them be able to take strides. And,
I love actors. Oh, am I echoing? I just started. I don't know what. Am I echoing? Okay, if I'm starting echoing, please let me know. I'm gonna give you guys a headache. I love her reaction shots as an actress. I think she just nails them. So when you're talking about the seated position, I was just zoned in on her facial expressions because she would be just in her eyes because I was only thinking to express herself.
Yes, it's like she's trapped inside of the propriety that the rest of her face requires, and it leaks out of her eyes. And yeah, it's beautiful. And Karen Hines is so stoic and wounded, and is, oh God. So I have a scarf that has passages from Persuasion on it, and part of it, of course, is that letter. And I gotta say, yeah, best love letter in literature. Do not at me.
So apparently, Captain Wentworth is a better letter writer than Mr. Darcy. Then, okay, I see how this.
Oh yeah. Oh, because Mr. Darcy's letter is all like,
it's explanatory.
It's justification bullshit. No, and Captain Wentworth's letter is like, okay, I'm gonna rip my beating heart out of my chest, and I'm gonna leave it here on this desk for you to find. Still beating, right?
I'll give you this one. I agree with this one because the Mr. Darcy letter is like giving you insight into his, his point of view, whereas, Captain Wentworth, he really is like, here, yeah, I love the way you're like,
No. Darcy's letter is basically business. It's basically, here's my decision-making process. Here's the prospectus. Like why I did what I did and why it was logical. Okay, dude, fine. And that's why Mr. Darcy, as much as I love Colin Firth, will never be my romantic hero, is because not until the 11th hour did he finally, well, he did, but it was behind the scenes. He took his head out of his ass earlier on than Elizabeth knew. But Catherine Wentworth, I think all the way along knows that he loves her, and he's got his prideful moments. But he does things like he helps her into the carriage, and he has these little tiny moments where, similar to what you talked about Amanda Roots, the emotion leaks out of her eyes. With Catherine Wentworth, his little gestures give him away. He takes the child off of her back when she's trying to comfort the one nephew who's got the broken arm, and the other nephew comes along. He's like, "Auntie," and is like climbing up on her and using her as a jungle gym. And Captain Wentworth basically takes the kid away and is like, "No, don't tease your aunt. Come here. I'm going to deal with you." And so he does all these little things, and then he kind of gets all emotionally constipated, like, "Oh, it was a little too much of a giveaway." And so I love him. I think he's adorable.
I mean, you kind of earlier when you mentioned the waiting part, and I thought I was echoing, so I was trying so hard, to hold my tongue. I mean, I'm not a big fan of this movie. I mean, I've seen it a lot. I don't know really why, but in The Lake House with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock, they have a conversation about persuasion. It says about the waiting and how this is this romantic moment for her. So you reminded me of that scene because I think the waiting part really does strike a chord with people because that's something that's realistic, and you can, you want them to, they're waiting to be worth it.
Yeah, I've never seen The Lake House, but okay.
There's a scene where they're sitting in the, it's the whole time travel, and I'm not going to get into that. It's a whole separate conversation. So they're sitting together on the back porch, and she's telling him about her favorite book, and it's Persuasion. She's saying the waiting. So you made me think of that.
Oh, funny. I mean, I know I'm not the first person to point out the waiting in Persuasion.
Oh no, I just think it's really great that it's striking a chord with people. I mean, totally different context, reasons for the waiting. I don't think I've actually, I listened to the DVD commentary because I'm that person. They didn't even talk about I mean, when you're talking about the camera angles, I've seen that movie, I don't know how many times, and I'm going, I didn't even think of that. And I've taken how many film classes over the years? I wasn't even thinking of that, station. That wasn't on my mind, but now I'm going to have to go back and rewatch it.
I might even be making it up. I have no idea, but I do know that one of the things I appreciate about that movie is the way that it really does seem to have sympathy for the fact that women had so little agency, and so yeah.
So favorite couple. I love that answer. I love it. Because it's Jane Austen.
The answer to a very simple question.
No, I mean, first of all, I love how, we're talking about romance tonight. It was very kind of vague, intentionally so topic, but I love how we ended up talking about Jane Austen. It's almost as if you have to mention the goddess divine when you talk about romance, and generally speaking.
And not everybody loves Jane, and that's fine too. And some people say Jane Austen is not romance, and I'm like, okay.
I mean, my whole little, again, I study the genre. So technically speaking, she was literature. And then after World War II, there was a pinkening of literature. And that was when it was technically became quote unquote romance. So it is classified as romance. It did not start out that way, but it is now. So fun fact for you people who, hanging out with us tonight.
and heck, I've talked about several books that are they're not necessarily romance. Also, I did you because I've right outside the genre. Oh my gosh, everybody does. That's not unusual.
Hi, Ambi. I'm like, hey, we even if somebody joined us, welcome to the romance discussion. And then she likes the Lake House. I mean, I think you gotta love Sandra Bullock. I mean, I don't think it matters what the movie is. You just kind of gotta love Sandra Bullock.
I do love Sandra Bullock. That's great.
I mean, I swear, it doesn't matter if it's The Proposal or, she's winning the Oscar. She's just gonna, kick it out of the park.
Proposal. Howdy, did she play a difficult heroine?
Hey, that again speaks to your writing soul. So does anyone else have any questions, whether it's talking about relationships, writing, romance. I mean, you answered my questions. I mean, I just love talking to you. You're just such a sweetheart. You're so smart. I love your personality and everything.
I'm gonna make you blush again. I love talking to you. You've got so much genuine energy and enthusiasm for the genre, and it was funny because being at that conference at Bowling Green was such a breath of fresh air because there was no like, okay, let's lay out why this genre should be taken seriously. Everybody there was on board with that from the get-go, and we spend so much of our time, I think, sometimes spending our birth as existing.
Yeah, I was so blown away by that because even when I got up to go present, so I was on the very first day, and I just remember going, this is the part where I would usually spend 10 minutes talking about my lit review, why this matters, and I got to skip ahead. I've never been able to do that anywhere else. I usually have to take a good portion of my presentation time or whatever time I'm allotted to specifically talk about why the genre matters. And that usually becomes, kind of something unto itself to justify my project. Usually I have to spend so much time saying, this matters. Please, please go with this. And then once I get them on board from lit review, then I have to go on to what I'm actually doing. But this time I actually got to say, this is where I get to skip ahead now. And I love that. I've never been able to do that before. And someone actually, I forget who it was, but I said something and they quoted me and put it on Twitter going, hey, I forget what I said specifically, but they quoted me saying, I get to skip ahead because everyone already accepts the romance genre here. And I was so excited that I got to do that. And it's true. So many people don't appreciate the genre. So when you're this beautiful, smart, intelligent woman telling me about romance, I'm like, yes, I love it. I love tonight's conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal, and it's funny because I sometimes I spend so much time on romance Twitter, and where again that it's a given that we're going to take each other seriously, and what's funny is that I'm out in the world and I'm working at a academic institution, and I occasionally tell people that my spare time I write books, and they're like, oh, well, what do you write? And I kind of steel myself and I go, I write romance, and in kind of a very, this is who I am, this is what I do way, and I kind of brace for backlash. What's really interesting is I don't know if it's because people that I tell, generally speaking, I know already, and they know me, or what, but I have yet to get somebody going, what? Really? Which I've been expecting, and I still expect, and I'm sure I'll get it at some point. But
the built-in fear there. I think this is the interesting part. Even if you haven't experienced it, you fear the experience, or you know it's coming. So there is something ingrained, whether it's because of the perception of the genre, because it's women's genre. You have that moment where like you kind of have a hesitation because you expect it.
Absolutely, at 100%, absolutely.
Which is not okay which is not okay with me. I hate that people don't want to talk about romance and they have that shame element. That makes me so sad. I wish things were different, and that's just
it's not okay with me either. And it's not I am not ashamed. I am absolutely not ashamed. I just have to brace for that educational moment.
No, I mean, it's not. I don't think anyone should feel ashamed for anything they read. I mean, whether you're writing content or you're reading content, I don't think people should judge you for it. It's the other person, the other who instills their own, their pontificating point of view over there onto you. That's my problem.
Oh, I don't. Absolutely. Like at one point, my now former boss, he said something like, he knew I wrote romance, and he said something like, oh, just as long as you don't write for Harlequin or something like that. And I was like, why would I not want to write for one of the biggest publishers in my genre? And he was kind of taken aback. I mean, I had a very egalitarian relationship with him, so this wasn't exactly being subordinate or whatever. But I was just like, dude, what's wrong with you? So that's kind of as close as I've come to that kind of reaction. But I live in the world I live in. We all live in the world we live in.
Oh, no, I think people, at the conference, and online, I think you guys get the bubbly, outgoing personality. I'm very quiet, generally speaking. So, I usually don't, I'm not talking about anything with people. So, like, no, I feel as if sometimes it doesn't organically come into the conversation. So it's not as if I walk around with my t-shirt, I would love romance, although I would wear that everywhere if I had a t-shirt like that. So if you know of one, send it to me. But oh, we have comments. So yes, Kristen did mention before people in her real life. She doesn't mention them, but you're thankful for this community. Yeah, the online community. It's the online sphere. We have this outlet. And then you're raised in a Southern Baptist and attended a Christian college. Well, Georgetown is,
it's good.
Yeah, I got my master's degree there, and I went to a private Catholic school my entire life, and I thought Georgetown, yes, there is kind of a reserved nature in some ways where people dress, very businessy. There's a professionalism, I think, with some of the students, just generally speaking. But I never felt as if they were, I don't know what the terminology would be, but like excluded. I never got that impression. I think Georgetown, even though it does have the religious undertone, it's not overtly, we're going to put it onto you.
Undertone, not an overtone. Yeah.
And then I'm sorry, I'm leaning forward to you and the little progressives here. Romance has long been regarded as the red-headed stepchild of the literary world.
Well, I'm both redheaded and I'm also a stepchild. So, okay.
I was gonna say that, I guess by this sentence, you found your spot, your space. You're in the exact writing genre you should be writing in. Oh, so then Natalie mentioned when your dad, we're talking about your dad, I have the progressive, so I'm trying really hard not to lean in and give you my forehead. So when I told my dad I had written my first book, he replied with Tolkien, or I can't read forward. I don't know if you can read the comments, so I don't have to lean all the way in. So he replied Tolkien, and he said, God, good, I always knew that a bookworm reading fantasy would be writing it eventually. And then he said he was proud of you, but he never read the book. Oh. Well, I hope he reads the book, and I don't know if you can see that. I got my Lord of the Rings books right over there, so I love me my Tolkien.
It later says he says he's proud of me and admits freely he could never write a book himself. So yeah. So I think that gets back to what you were talking about before, which is that writing an entire book is not easy, and most people, even if they start it, they don't finish it.
And you finished multiple books.
Yeah, I'm fortunate. Don't get me wrong. I am totally fortunate. The aforementioned husband is extremely supportive. We don't have any children.
You have beautiful fur babies.
I have beautiful fur babies, but I've got a lot of things lined up in my favor that a lot of people don't. So I'm completely cognizant of that. I'm completely appreciative of it. I'm not one of those people who would say, "Oh, well, if I can do it, anybody can do it," because I know that I've been given a lot of grace, to use sort of a slightly religious term, very generically. A lot of things have lined up in my favor, and I'm very fortunate. So.
Well, I'm so happy that I got to meet you and have these conversations with you. I'm so happy you were fortunate enough to be a part of this community, because you make me so happy.
Bless your heart. That's fantastic. I'm going to have to sign off soon because I have to get up super early in the morning, and it's now 9 o'clock. And
I know, I didn't even realize it was getting this late. I kind of looked up about 5 seconds ago.
This old lady needs to get up at 5. So
it's a very early wake up call. I give you a lot of credit for not hitting that snooze button.
Well, it's the DC commute. If I go in early, I can leave early, and it makes all the difference in the world.
Well, I live on, I don't want to say where I live because that would be creepy.
Don't say where you live.
But I was like, I live in the heart of DC, so I completely understand.
Yeah, well, I live in the burbs, and so it takes me a little to get in and, a little get out. So, yeah.
And I just saw that Natalie says she's written 8 books, and I'm doing there's a GIF with Christina Aguilera where she's doing, her praise. That's kind of the GIF I want to send you right now. And you say you've written 8 books. That's amazing. Yeah. Gold stars. I always want to be like, this is going to sound weird, but I always think of giving someone chocolate chip cookies as a reward. Like, here's your chocolate chip cookie. Yeah. I swear, I'm one of those people where like I have that like built-in mother hen gene. It's so weird, but I just gold stars for that one.
It's as somebody who's married to an Italian, as somebody who's best friends with an Italian, it's the Italian in you.
That like I want to give them the food as like a reward system.
Yeah, you're like, honey, when did you eat? And I'm Scandinavian, okay, so I get in with all these Italians, and I'm like, can I just be in the corner and read?
I mean, I'm very quiet. I don't have like a boisterous personality. I think maybe like the English and Irish side of my father, you know, that kind of took over a little bit. But you know, I'll take it.
Well, don't know. But
yeah, no, 5 a.m. wake up call. I mean, I'm so happy and thankful and appreciative that you took the time to do this with me. I mean, I love talking to you. You're just so sweet and positive, and your journey is just so inspiring because I know I'm going to walk into a bookstore someday and it's going to say Adele Buck on the spine, and I'm going to get to buy that book and be like, hey, can you autograph this for me? It's going to happen. I can see it. I can see it.
Thank you for your positivity. Thank you for the opportunity to come in and chat with you, because I love talking to you. I could literally talk all night, but I really shouldn't. So
I mean, it's so nice to talk to someone who loves the romance genre like I do. I mean, I have my online community, but in real life, I really don't get to talk about this on a daily basis. So having this opportunity just, you know, it makes my whole day.
Well, honey, we live in the same area. You can come have a cup of coffee with me whenever you want.
Oh, I'm totally gonna take you up on that. I mean, there are multiple Starbucks around here.
100% legit.
That is happening. So we just, and I have witnesses, that we have viewers who can testify to this.
Co-signed, absolutely. As Ms. Bev said to me, she complimented me on my presentation after the Bowling Green thing, and we were actually getting a photo op, and she's like, "I liked your presentation." I said, "Yes, thank you. I saw that on Twitter." She said, she looked at me, she looked up at me because she's tiny and I'm tall, and she goes, "I don't bullshit." So as Ms. Bev would say, I don't bullshit.
I love her so much. She followed me after that conference, and I was just going, life made. Beverly Jenkins is following me on Twitter.
Oh,
all is right with the world.
When Beverly Jenkins followed me back on Twitter, that was a major like, oh my God moment too. Yeah. So yeah.
I have to admit though, I mean, I think I'm allowed to say this. I've been, because she's been very upfront. So I interviewed her for my dissertation, and she spent almost 2.5 hours talking to me, and I'm going, you are the nicest human being on the face of the planet to take the time to do this. You're a rock star. I mean, she is the modern day, goddess divine as far as I am concerned, because it's Miss Beverly Jenkins. She's so cool. And so I couldn't believe she did that. I'm like, you are the best. And this is only my second or third interview too, and I'm talking to, Beverly Jenkins. I mean, I was jumping on my skin. I was so excited.
She is awesome. I have not enough good things to say about her. So.
And I remember the picture because I liked it. That had a lot of likes and retweets because you called her your hero, or I remember you had like a really positive phrase or term for her, and people were just yes.
I believe I said yes. You can meet your heroes.
Oh, I called her hero. That's what it was.
Yeah. I believe that's what I said. Yeah. But.
And everyone should be following her on Twitter. Everyone should. I have before we say goodnight, I have every link for Adele. I have her Twitter and Instagram, so make sure you go follow her because she's awesome. And I love her.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh no, thank you for saying yes. I mean, you are just. I love being able to talk about romance. I love being able to talk about romance with you. I mean, this has just been like the best conversation ever. I love it. It makes me so happy. I'm gonna be smiling now for the rest of the night. And now I'm making her blush again.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay, with that, I'm going to sign off because I'm going to sleep.
And I have to wake up early too. At least we're in the same time zone, so it makes sense when we say that.
Yeah, indeed.
So I will hit stop broadcast, and I just want to say goodnight to everybody who joined us. So thank you for joining us, and hopefully next time I will see you guys later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.